All right, welcome back. And today we are going to talk about data types and operators. First, we're going to be talking about these different data types that most languages have. Now, we call these primitive data types. So primitive data types are the simplest data types and are shared across many programming languages. And in our Python case, there's a lot more than just these, but these are like the simple ones that we'll think about first. Okay, so here what we have is we have numbers, strings, and Boolean. Those are the three data types that we will care about. Why are there different data types? Well, different data types is basically categorizing information, right? It's a way for the computer to distinguish different types of input. So numbers are these numbers that you can see over here. Strings are like strings of characters, usually like words, text, and stuff like that. Those are strings. And Boolean is literally just true or false. So that's pretty simple, right? Now for each one of these data types, they have different characteristics and different operators that you can use on them. So what are operators? Operators are basically functions that you can call on these data types. For example, if you think about numbers, you can square numbers. For example, if we want to square 3, then it becomes 9. And then if you want to square 12 or negative 12, it becomes 144, right? We can add numbers, we can subtract them. But if you square a string, that doesn't really make any sense, right? You can't really square a string. So that's why numbers and strings are different. And then Boolean too. Squaring doesn't really make any sense unless you define saying like, okay, if I say false would be 0 and true would be 1, then if we square true, it's 1, and if we square 0, it's still 0. So it doesn't do anything, right? But let's not think about this. So basically, numbers, strings, and Boolean. It's like you can't really compare numbers and strings and Boolean, right? You have to do these operations on the same thing usually. So it's like apples and oranges and cherries, where Booleans are cherries. We talked about operators and functions. Let's talk about operators now. What are operators? So operators are things that you can do between these data types. So for example, you can do 6 divided by 3. This is an operator. It's the division operator. It's an arithmetic operator, right? So then 6 plus 3, these are also operators. Now, numbers are great because you can use them to make calculations. You can't really add strings, right? For example, hello, and then if you add sup, then it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as the numbers. We'll get into that soon later. But for now, we'll talk about other operations. There's also 6 minus 3, the minus operator. You know what that does, it subtracts. You got multiplication, which is defined by the star. And then you also have maybe modulo, which is kind of the opposite of division, where the division you get the quotient and the modulo you get the remainder. So this should be like a 0. These are what we call arithmetic operators. We also have something called comparison operator. And you should know these. These are smaller than, greater than, equal, smaller than or equal, bigger or equal. These are comparison operators, and the output is actually a Boolean, which we will talk about now. So you see numbers, if you add them together, they become another number. If you do like 6, is it smaller than 3? That's a no. You're going to get something called a Boolean. You're going to get either true or false. And in here, you'll get false. So what are the operators for Boolean? The most common ones are and, or, and not. So these are the 3 operators, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at the code and see how this works. So we're going to be using numbers and Booleans now. All right, now we're back to our REPL, and now we are going to play around with these operators. We've already seen these arithmetic operators, right? They're quite self-explanatory. 6 divided by 3, 3 multiplied by that, 4 modulo 2, right? So we know we have that. But then we also learned about comparison operators. Like, is 4 bigger than 5? It should be false. It's false. But what if you have this or this? What is it going to get us? It's going to give us Oops, so I made an error. It says invalid syntax. So maybe it's not the right operator. Let's try something else. Okay, so now this or that, and then it's going to give me true. Why did it give me true? Because like the language says, it becomes true if one of them is true, right? So 4 is bigger than 5, that's not true, but 3 smaller than 4, that is true. So what essentially happened was false or true. And then because of that, it becomes true. What if it was an and? If it was and, it would say false, because for and, you need all of them to be true, right? So it's only when these two are true. So what happens if I do not? What does not do? It actually just does the opposite. Like imagine if it were going to be true, and then it's just going to be the opposite, and it's going to turn false. So those are the operators for Booleans, and they're going to be really, really powerful when we talk about control flow. You know, how does a computer decide what to do? Well, you give it rules. You say stuff like, if 4 is bigger than 2, or like you say, if your age is bigger than 18, you can go to the casino. If your age is smaller than 18, then you cannot go. Like programs do that. And then you're going to be using these Booleans to determine which code path you want to go. We'll talk more about that in the next course. Now let's talk about strings. So for strings, what strings are anything that are between double quotes or single quotes, like hello, you know, or sup, right? Let's look back at our other page. As you can see, we got hello, 3. So this might be confusing. You might think, oh, this is definitely a number. Yes, it's a number, but because there are quotes around it, it's actually a string. So if you do like quotes 3 and then you add like 4, it's not going to give you 7. It's actually going to give you the string. So soccer, Python, right? This is a single quote. We're just going to learn about one operator for now because we're just learning the most common ones. For now, let's learn about the plus. What would happen if you do hello plus sup together? If you don't know, why don't we just try it out? So we wanted to add hello plus sup. What would that give us? So it seems like it just concatenates the string. Concatenating means just sticking the strings together, right? You can try this. Maybe double quotes this time. So one of them is double quote, one of them is single quote. Does it matter? It doesn't matter. There are nuances between those two, but we're not going to cover that for now. So as you can see, what if we want to add a string like hello to a number? Does that work? No, it doesn't, because you can't concatenate a string with an int, right? This operation is only for strings. So, okay, what about 4 plus 4? It doesn't work because the first one is a string and the second 4 is actually a number. So what would happen if you add 3 plus 4? Is it 7? No, it's not. It's going to be 34 because it's literally just characters. They don't represent it as numbers here. So those are strings. Now you might be wondering, why is it called string? Well, it's actually quite simple. It's a string of characters or string of symbols. So technically a string is just a bunch of character like A plus G for A. Like these are 3 characters and they're strung together into a string, right? Like let's give it a variable name, my string, right? You can call it whatever you want because these are variable names. And then if you output my string, what would it give you? G4A. Yeah. Now strings are pretty important because they're here to display data that uses text or symbol, like printing our name to the screen, which allows us to create text on our program. It's useful because it's human readable. We are humans. We don't just look at numbers. We look at text. We have languages. So for example, on a website, the words you see are part of a string. So this is what you can do with strings. There's actually a lot of other things you can do. I'm just going to give you a little hint now. Right? You're not going to learn this right here, but you could see that it does something. Now, if you're curious, you can always look around. You're going to eventually learn this in my course, but I just want to tell you that the way I want you guys to learn, you are free to check other things on the internet and what else you can do, because the process of programming and software engineering does not limit to what we teach you. Usually, when you learn one thing, you don't learn every possibility. That's not the point of programming. You learn about what is possible and the fundamentals, and then everything else, you can just search for it. a good software engineer knows how to search well on the internet. Like for example, if I want to know how do I subtract a string from another string, you can just Google subtract string from another string Python. I might not know on the top of my head, but that doesn't matter. It's the fact that I know that an answer exists that I can look at. There's no shame in looking on the internet. There's no shame on using Stack Overflow. We have these resources for a reason. This is why we can work very fast. So you can make sure that whenever you go on Stack Overflow or you read about a tutorial, read it thoroughly and understand what they're saying and if it's the same problem for you. So you can see here what they do is that they see if the string is inside this string and then they're going to replace it by nothing. And then you're going to be like, wait, what is this command? Or what is this command? Replace. I've never seen that before. Well, then you can say Python string replace. What is it? And then there you go. There's like a bunch of resources that tells you what to do. I want you guys to keep in mind that you can search things, and I actually encourage you guys to search things and learn beyond the course, because that way you learn how to learn by yourself. That is the whole point of teaching you fundamentals, is to give you tools to do more than what you're taught. So now you know how to manipulate strings and numbers and Booleans. So remember, there's a lot of things you can do, and let's try a simple thing right now. Like, what do you think would happen if I print a string and then you add like a number and then another string? Do you think that would work given what we did before? No, because like I said, this the 4 is an integer, it's not a string. I'm going to teach you a little something funky. It's called str. It's short for string. It's going to turn an int into a string, right? And then now it works. It's hejo string of 4 ASDF. Beautiful. So this, what it does is you could take in a number, and what it's going to do is going to turn it into a string so that you can actually concatenate it. Now, one more thing I want to teach you is a command called type. Now, as you can see, every time I use these functions, I always write the name of the function, and then I do open parentheses and close parentheses. That indicates that it's a function, right? So as you can see, it's not about what the name is, it's about like how you call it. Print is also a function that just prints whatever is inside, prints the string. And then type, what it does is it tells you what kind of type it is. So if I put 3, it's going to tell you it's an integer. If I do 3 with quotes, it's going to say it's a string. str means string. If I do type true, which is a Boolean, it's going to say it's a Boolean. Those are the 3 that you should know for now. One thing you can do if you're never sure, for example, if you do a equals hello, and then a equals hello, but you're not completely sure what the type is, just write type, open parentheses, your variable name, and then it's going to say it's a string. So this will become very useful on the quiz that you'll do. All right, and that's it for the class, and see you in the next one.